Scorpion Part 1. When a Scorpio reaches the breaking point, instinct awakens. Have you ever watched the moment a dam bursts? Not just the slow leaking cracks, but the final second when silence collapses into a roar and everything held back comes flooding through. That, my friend, is what it feels like when a Scorpio has nothing left to lose. Scorpios are often misunderstood. People think of them as intense, secretive, even dangerous. But what most don't see is the silent war they fight within. Every Scorpio walks a tightrope between immense emotional depth and total emotional collapse. And when the world strips them bare, when they've given all the love they can, swallowed every betrayal, endured every loss, that's when something ancient wakes up inside them. It's not revenge. It's not madness. It's instinct. Candle the silent burn of the Scorpio soul. From the outside, a Scorpio pushed to their edge might seem calm, even cold, but underneath, a silent fire is roaring. Their pain doesn't come in loud sobs. It arrives in a stillness that makes the air around them feel heavy. They retreat, not because they're broken, but because they're transforming. I remember a woman I once counseled. Let's call her Maya, a Scorpio, born on November 12th. For years, she stayed in a relationship with a man who constantly belittled her dreams. She loved deeply, forgave endlessly, and hoped patiently. Until one day, she came home and found a message meant for someone else. A betrayal that shattered her last thread of hope. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She packed a single bag, left a note, and never looked back. That was the day her instinct awakened. Not out of anger, but survival. Collision, the moment of no return. Here's the truth about Scorpio. When they're cornered, they don't explode. They evolve. But their evolution isn't like others. It's not a graceful butterfly rising from a cocoon. It's a phoenix clawing its way out of ashes, feathers still on fire. What awakens in a Scorpio at this point is raw, primal clarity. They suddenly see through lies, shed illusions, and cut cords. Not with rage, but with purpose. They become surgical with their emotions. Their silence becomes louder than any scream. And if you were the one who pushed them there, you'll feel it in the way they vanish from your life. Not to hurt you, but to save themselves. Man in lotus position, a spiritual mirror. Scorpio in the path of the Bodhisattva. In Buddhism, we talk about the concept of transcending suffering, not avoiding it. Scorpio doesn't avoid suffering. They walk through it. And that's what makes their journey so profound. A Bodhisattva doesn't run from pain. They transform it into wisdom. When a Scorpio has nothing left, they don't lose themselves. They find their truest form. That's the gift of emptiness. When your hands hold nothing, you're finally free to reach for everything. Milky Way, the wisdom in loss. I've seen this pattern with Scorpio friends, students, even strangers who wrote to me after watching my videos. Loss doesn't destroy them, it purifies them. And ironically, the world tends to notice them more in that state of stripped-back clarity. Because in a world full of noise and chaos, the stillness of someone who's already faced their worst fear becomes magnetic. They don't chase anymore. They attract. They don't explain. They just live. Brain closing lesson, from breakdown to breakthrough. So if you're watching this and you are a Scorpio or loved one, understand this. When they've got nothing left to lose, they don't spiral. They sharpen. They become the version of themselves they were always meant to be, but couldn't access while carrying everyone else's weight. This isn't the end of their story. It's the start of their ascension. And if you've reached that moment, good. Because what's ahead is not destruction, it's liberation. Glowing Star, stay with me, because in part 2, we're going to explore the sacred art of Scorpio's rebirth, how pain becomes power, and how they build something unstoppable from the ashes of everything lost. Scorpion Part 2, the power born from pain, Scorpio, and the sacred art of rebirth. Pain, for most people, is something to be escaped. We seek comfort, distraction, and numbness. But for Scorpio, pain is something different. It is not just a wound, it's a portal. A passage into something deeper, something hidden, something more powerful. Let me say this clearly. Scorpio doesn't just survive pain, they become it. Then, they master it. Drop of blood, the sacred collapse before the rebirth. There's a paradox at the heart of Scorpio's transformation. The stronger they are, the more they seem to fall apart first. Why? Because for Scorpio, strength is not surface level. It's not the smile you wear in front of people. It's not a motivational quote or a loud declaration. Scorpio strength is forged in silence, under pressure, alone in the dark. A Scorpio must first collapse inward, must first experience the rawness of everything being torn away before the rebirth begins. They don't rebuild on top of broken pieces. They burn everything down to ashes, and only then, they rise. Fire, a real-life story. The woman who became her own fire. I want to tell you about someone I met during a retreat in Chiang Mai. Her name was Evelyn. She had come to Thailand after losing everything. Her marriage, her business, and tragically, her only brother. She was a Scorpio, born November 4th. And when I met her, she spoke little, smiled rarely, and carried the weight of someone who had walked through hell barefoot. But over the course of our sessions, she began to write. She didn't share her pain in conversation, but every morning, she'd place pages of poetry outside my door. The poems were brutal, honest, bleeding, and then, slowly, they began to change. From, I am nothing now, to, I am becoming something else. From, they broke me, to, I rebuilt me. 3 months later, Evelyn didn't just smile again. She published a collection called Phoenix in Silence. It won an award for debut poetry in Singapore. You see, Scorpio doesn't announce their comeback. They just emerge from the fire already glowing. DNA Scorpio's DNA, transformation isn't optional. This isn't just metaphor. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, and deep transformation. In astrology, Pluto doesn't ask for change politely. It demands it. So when life begins to unravel, Scorpio doesn't resist the way others do. They feel the chaos. They mourn the loss. But then, they lean in. Because deep down, every Scorpio knows. Destruction is not the end. It's the invitation to evolve. Buddhist parallels, rebirth beyond the ego. In Buddhism, we talk about ego death, the shattering of the false self we cling to for identity. It's painful, humbling, but it's also necessary if we want to taste true freedom. Scorpio doesn't fear ego death. They embrace it. The Scorpio journey is the path of the Arhat, the one who burns through desire, suffering, and illusion until only truth remains. They are the sign most likely to understand the Buddhist teaching. You only lose what you cling to. And when a Scorpio finally lets go of what hurt them, what betrayed them, what lied to them, what rises is not a wounded version of who they were. What rises is truth in human form. Performing arts, the mask Scorpio burns. One of the most powerful aspects of Scorpio's rebirth is the shedding of masks. The nice girl, mask they wore to keep the peace. The loyal partner, mask they kept even when love was no longer safe. The strong friend, mask that kept them from asking for help. In the fire of pain, Scorpio realizes something sacred. You don't have to become anything. You just have to stop pretending. And so, they stop. They stop pretending to be okay. Stop pretending to be forgiving when they're still healing. Stop pretending to fit a life that never fit them back. That's when the rebirth becomes unstoppable. Lightbulb lesson. True power isn't loud, it's rooted. In a world obsessed with surface strength, gym bodies, fake smiles, hustle culture, Scorpio's power feels ancient. It's not flashy. It's rooted. After their breakdown, Scorpio doesn't scream for attention. They move differently. Speak with fewer words, more meaning. Trust less, but love deeper. Laugh rarely, but honestly. They don't need validation anymore. Because what they found is priceless. They become their own home. Closing reflection. The fire was never their enemy. If you're a Scorpio and you're in pain right now, if you feel like everything is being taken from you, know this, it's not the end. You are not being punished. You are being recalled to your power. You are not breaking down. You are shedding who you are not. You are not lost. You are simply in the sacred dark before your rise. So let the fire take what it needs to. You'll emerge stronger, wiser, and more beautifully you than ever before. In Part 3, we will explore the wounds Scorpio hides from the world, their shadow, their silence, and how those invisible scars become sacred weapons. Stay with us on this journey. The path to rebirth is not easy, but for Scorpio, it is divine. Scorpion Part 3, the scars Scorpio doesn't show, turning pain into power. You've probably heard the phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But for Scorpio, that's not just a quote, it's a survival mechanism. Scorpio carries emotional scars like armor. Not to boast, not to seek sympathy, but because behind every silent stare, every quiet choice, there is a battle you never saw. And the most terrifying part? Those scars don't make them weaker. They make them dangerous in the most sacred way. Zipper mouth face the wounds Scorpio hides from the world. Scorpio is not the type to bleed in public. They don't post sad captions. They don't cry in front of crowds. They retreat into the shadows and heal in silence. But inside, they carry the weight of betrayals they never spoke of, abandonment they never explained, abuse they minimized so others wouldn't feel guilty, self-blame they never deserved. I once asked a Scorpio client during a private healing session, "What do you fear the most?" She didn't blink. "Letting someone know how much I've already been broken," she said. That's the Scorpio paradox. They crave depth, but they also fear being seen too deeply because they've learned the hard way that not everyone handles their truth with care. Firecracker when pain becomes a weapon and a shield. When Scorpio is wounded, they don't lash out immediately. They absorb. They analyze. They store. But here's the shift. When pushed too far, Scorpio weaponizes wisdom. They learn the psychology of every betrayal. They memorize the map of every lie. And they come back, not with revenge, but with strategy, with clarity, and sometimes with total disconnection. They don't always need to fight. They just need to disappear. Because absence is their deadliest silence. Crossword's personal story, the man who left and never looked back. Let me tell you about Andre, a Scorpio, born October 31st. Yes, on Halloween. And maybe that was always fate. He grew up in a violent household, learned early how to read a room, how to anticipate danger, how to hide his dreams behind a calm face. He married young, too young, and his wife was cruel in a quiet, manipulative way, always eroding his confidence, then blaming him for breaking. He stayed for 11 years, until the night she insulted his mother during her funeral. He didn't yell, didn't argue. He went home, packed 2 suitcases, and vanished. 3 years later, Andre is a clinical psychologist. He specializes in trauma therapy for men. He tells his story not in anger, but in service. That's Scorpio. They don't just heal. They use their wounds to heal others. Person Lotus Position Buddhist Wisdom, the Wounded Healer. In Buddhism, we honor the concept of the wounded healer, one who has suffered so deeply, they become a bridge for others to cross their own pain. This is Scorpio's true superpower. They walk through hell and come back with maps for the rest of us. They understand karma, not as punishment, but as the deep teaching of what happens when pain goes unprocessed. So they process it. In the silence, in the fire, in the prayer, and when they emerge. They don't just survive, they guide. Locked. Why Scorpio keeps their past locked away. You may wonder, if they're so strong, so wise, why don't they share their story? Because Scorpio knows. Not everyone deserves access to their soul. They've been burned by people who demanded honesty but couldn't handle truth. They've been punished for being too intense, too real, too raw. So now, they protect their story. Only a chosen few get the privilege of hearing the whole truth. And if you're lucky enough to be trusted by a Scorpio, honor it. Because it took a lifetime of pain to make that trust possible. What Scorpios gain from pain? What does a Scorpio gain from all this hurt? Discernment. They now read people better than any book. Depth. Shallow relationships no longer tempt them. Purpose. They no longer exist to please. They live to become. And most of all, peace. The kind of peace that comes after the war. Not because they forgot what happened, but because they finally understand why it did. Closing reflection. Scars are sacred. If you're a Scorpio reading this, you've likely been hurt more than you'll ever admit. You've stayed quiet through betrayals others would have screamed over. You've endured loneliness that should have crushed you, but it didn't. And you didn't become bitter. You became brilliant. Your scars? They're not shameful. They're sacred. They are your trophies from battles fought in silence. They are proof that you were never weak, only weathered. And weathered souls, they don't break. They build storms. In Part 4, we will explore Scorpio and the relationships that shape and shatter them. What happens when love becomes betrayal, and how Scorpio learns to trust again or never does. Broken Heart Part 4, Love, Betrayal, and the Game of Trust, Scorpio's most sacred test. There is no battlefield more dangerous to a Scorpio than intimacy. Because unlike most signs, Scorpio doesn't love lightly. They love with their entire soul. They don't date. They merge. But with that depth comes a price. And when trust is broken, when loyalty is betrayed, Scorpio doesn't just walk away hurt. They walk away transformed. Not all pain cuts the same. Betrayal to a Scorpio is not just heartbreak. It's soulquake. Magnifying glass tilted left the sacred nature of Scorpio's trust. To understand Scorpio, you must understand how they trust. Scorpio doesn't trust quickly, not because they're cynical, but because they know the cost. They observe before they open. They test before they reveal. They pull away before they draw close. But once you pass those unspoken trials, you are inside a circle that is sacred. They will protect you like family, fight for you like a warrior, keep your secrets like a vault. But if you break that trust, there is no going back. There is only reconfiguration. You may still speak, still see each other, but in their eyes, something has shifted forever. High voltage, a Scorpio in love, all or nothing. In love, Scorpio is intoxicating. They listen not just to your words, but to your energy. They read your silences. They remember the way you looked at them 3 months ago. They don't fall in love. They descend into it. But here's the danger. Because they love so deeply, their fear of betrayal becomes an invisible shadow in every connection. If you're with a Scorpio, know this. They may ask questions that feel too intense. They may go quiet when they feel unsafe. They may test you when they feel vulnerable. Not to play games, but because they need to know. Can I survive you? Brain personal story. The artist who loved too hard. Let me tell you about Marcellus, a Scorpio I met in Paris during a spiritual retreat. He was a painter, a lover of silence and storms. He fell in love with a woman who was all light, spontaneous, joyful, open-hearted. She was an Aries, fire, forward, fearless. They were magnetic until she kissed someone else at a gallery opening. She told him immediately, crying. Said it meant nothing. But it wasn't about the kiss. It was about the breach. For Scorpio, betrayal is not always the act itself. It's the crack in the bond, the shift in energy, the sense that you chose someone else over the sacredness we had. He didn't yell, didn't shame her. He just left the gallery and never saw her again. But do you know what he did? He painted a series called The Touch of Flame. It became one of the most emotionally raw exhibitions in Montmartre that year. Scorpio doesn't collapse in betrayal. They alchemize it into art. Person in lotus position Scorpio and karma, when betrayal becomes a teacher. In Buddhism, betrayal is not a punishment. It's a lesson. It reveals your attachments, illusions, and expectations. Scorpio learns through betrayal how to detach with dignity. They learn that pain doesn't mean weakness. It means you cared. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming your power. When a Scorpio survives betrayal, they come back sharper. Not colder, but clearer. They know now who they are, what they deserve, and who never gets close again. Face without mouth what happens to the betrayer. You might wonder, what does Scorpio do to those who break their trust? Do they retaliate? Not always. Sometimes, yes, they sting. They expose truth. They cut ties. But most of the time, they vanish. Their silence is their revenge. Their absence is their punishment. And their peace? That's the reminder you lost something rare. Because the only thing more haunting than a Scorpio's anger is their indifference. DNA how Scorpio learns to trust again or doesn't. Can Scorpio love again? Yes. But the second time, they're not naive. They don't give blindly. They watch. Not because they're bitter, but because they've seen what darkness love can carry, and now they choose more wisely. They still love deeply, but now they love with boundaries. They love with one eye open. And that's not cynicism. That's wisdom wrapped in scar tissue. Light bulb closing lesson. What Scorpio teaches us about sacred loyalty. If you are a Scorpio who's been betrayed, know this. Your loyalty is not weakness. Your pain is not a flaw. You didn't lose because you loved deeply. You grew because you didn't run from it. And if someone shattered your trust, don't waste your fire proving your worth. Use that fire to forge a new world. One where your heart is safe, your boundaries strong, and your peace non-negotiable. Because Scorpio doesn't end with betrayal. They evolve beyond it. Dove in Part 5, we will explore what happens when a Scorpio finally goes cold. What does it mean when the heart that once burned for you becomes ice? And why sometimes there's no way back? Snowflake Part 5, when a Scorpio's heart turns to ice, the final freeze. There is nothing more haunting than the silence of a Scorpio who once loved you. Not their anger, not their tears, but their absence. Because when a Scorpio's heart turns cold, it doesn't just cool, it freezes over, encasing everything it once held in a vault of ice no warmth can melt again. The Scorpio freeze isn't revenge. It's the funeral of a bond they once protected with their life. Ice Cube, the anatomy of emotional winter. Scorpios don't become cold overnight. They give chances. They observe. They hope. But betrayal, disrespect, or emotional neglect builds layer by layer until finally, their heart says, enough. Never again. This is when Scorpio shifts into detachment mode. They don't shout. They don't fight. They just withdraw completely, as if you never existed. This emotional winter is not bitterness. It is self-preservation. They've learned the hard way that fire can warm or destroy. So now, they keep that fire to themselves. Brain psychological insight, the shutdown reflex. In psychology, there's a concept called emotional cutoff, where a person protects themselves by severing emotional contact with those who hurt them. Scorpio doesn't do this to be cruel. They do it to stop bleeding. When they give you the cold face, it's not that they don't care. It's that they cared too much, for too long, and finally ran out of capacity. What you're seeing isn't indifference. It's the scarred aftermath of overgiving. Open book real life story, the professor who went silent. Years ago, I met a university professor named Halima, Scorpio, November 16th. Brilliant, elegant, respected. She was married for 18 years to a man who, slowly and consistently, made her feel invisible. He never yelled, never cheated, but every conversation was cold. Every compliment withheld, every emotion met with silence. Until one night, she made dinner, sat across from him, and realized she was eating with a ghost, a man who had long since stopped loving her, but wouldn't leave. So she did. She didn't leave a note. She didn't ask for a final talk. She moved to another city, took a new position, and never looked back. When I asked her if she still loved him, she smiled sadly. I buried that version of me, she said. She doesn't exist anymore. That's the Scorpio freeze. Not revenge. Just a soul reset. Buddhist insight, the detachment of compassion. In Buddhist practice, detachment is not coldness. It is liberation. It means loving without clinging, feeling without drowning, caring without self-sacrifice. Scorpio, when evolved, embodies this teaching. They stop chasing closure, stop needing validation, stop hoping people will change. Instead, they find peace and release. They stop seeking warmth from those who only ever gave frost. They don't freeze because they hate. They freeze because they've awakened. DNA, the Scorpio freeze is final, and that's what hurts. What most people don't understand is, when a Scorpio cuts you off, they don't come back to check. They don't peek at your stories. They don't ask about you through friends. They're gone. And it's that completeness that hurts the most. Because you realize, too late, that you were not dealing with someone playing games. You were dealing with someone who meant everything they gave and meant everything they withdrew. Lightbulb, what Scorpio teaches us about boundaries. If you're not a Scorpio, but love one, here's the truth. You won't always get warnings. You won't get second chances when the line is crossed. So if you're blessed with a Scorpio's presence, protect it. Don't mistake their loyalty for weakness. Don't test their patience for fun. Don't ignore their silence and assume it means nothing. Because the silence of a Scorpio? It's the sound of them burying the part of them that loved you. Closing reflection. The ice is sacred. If you are a Scorpio who has gone cold, you're not broken. You're wise. You're not heartless. You're healed. You're not cold. You're guarded by the truth. And the truth is, your heart didn't turn to ice. It simply learned how to protect the warmth it still carries for those who deserve it. You didn't lose your fire. You just chose to stop burning for people who stood there and watched you turn to ash. Dove in Part 6, we will step into the moment Scorpio rises again, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in purpose. We will meet the phoenix. We will understand the rebirth. We will see how Scorpio transforms devastation into destiny. Fire Part 6, real story. How a Scorpio lost everything and rebuilt from ashes. There are stories that shake us. Then, there are stories that transform us. This is the story of one such Scorpio. Not a celebrity, not a saint, just a soul, like you and me, who lost it all and became something greater. Firecracker the fall, when the ground disappears. Her name was Danielle, born November 15th. She had everything, or so it seemed. A loving husband, 2 children, a growing wellness brand, and a modest house by the lake. She radiated stability, discipline, strength. Until one rainy evening, everything changed. Her husband confessed he had been in love with someone else. For 2 years. He wasn't sorry. He just wanted to start over without her. The betrayal was surgical. No shouting. No cruelty. Just the quiet sound of glass shattering inside her soul. That week, she lost her marriage. A month later, the business she had built collapsed after her co-founder embezzled funds. 3 months after that, her mother died unexpectedly. Everything that defined her life disappeared within 120 days. Pull the void, where Scorpio surrenders. Danielle didn't lash out. She didn't post online. She didn't call her ex a monster. She simply disappeared. She moved to a small monastery in the north of India. Silent retreat. No internet. No identity. No future. I met her there, sitting quietly beside a Bodhi tree. She barely spoke at first, but when she did, her voice didn't tremble. I came here to bury my story, she said. But Scorpio doesn't bury things. They transform them. Seedling the rise, what survives the fire. In the silence of the Himalayas, Danielle did something most people never do. She faced herself. Not the version polished for others. Not the role of mother, wife, or entrepreneur. Just the core self, stripped, broken, raw. She didn't pray for her pain to stop. She prayed to understand why it came. And in that, she found her answer. Everything I lost was never mine. It was what I built to avoid facing myself. After 6 months of silence, she didn't go back to her old life. She created a new one. She moved to Bali, opened a trauma-informed retreat center, now teaches workshops on spiritual recovery and post-betrayal purpose. Her story went viral last year, not because it was dramatic, but because her transformation was undeniable. Person Lotus Position Buddhist Reflection, the Path of the Phoenix. Scorpio's journey echoes a deep Buddhist principle. To be reborn, we must first allow the self to die. Danielle didn't get over her losses. She died into them. She let her false identity burn. Let her attachments fall away. Let her ego dissolve in tears. And in doing so, she discovered what Buddhists call non-self, anatta, the realization that we are not our roles, our traumas, or our past. We are the awareness beneath it all. And Scorpio, when awakened, embodies this truth like no other sign. Brain, what this teaches us about rebirth. Danielle's story is not rare because she lost everything. It's rare because of how she came back. Without bitterness, without blame, without needing to prove anything. She didn't seek revenge. She sought restoration. And the world felt it. Now, women from all over the world attend her retreats. Not because she's perfect, but because she's proof. Proof that the end is never the end. That the fire that broke you is the same fire that reforges you. Light bulb closing lesson. The power of starting over. If you are a Scorpio or someone in the middle of losing it all right now, remember this. You are not being destroyed. You are being realigned. The universe isn't punishing you. It's purifying you. Let it burn. Let what isn't meant for you fall away. And when the dust settles, you will stand taller, not because you survived, but because you were reborn into someone you were always meant to be. In Part 7, we dive into Scorpio's deep alignment with Buddhist truths, how impermanence, detachment, and death are not enemies but allies in the journey to awakening. Candle Part 7, Impermanence, Ego Death, and Rebirth, Scorpio's hidden link to Buddhist wisdom. There's a reason Scorpio is often called the most spiritually intense sign of the zodiac. It's not just because they feel deeply. It's because they live close to death, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. But where others see destruction, Scorpio sees truth. And that truth? It's the very essence of Buddhist wisdom. To be Scorpio is to understand, often through pain, that nothing lasts. Nothing is promised. And the only constant is transformation. Tornado, the Buddhist law of impermanence, anicca. In Buddhism, anicca means impermanence. It is the understanding that everything, joy, suffering, love, youth, status, is temporary. Scorpio lives this. From a young age, many Scorpios experience early loss, betrayal, or abandonment. They learn not to cling, because clinging only leads to heartbreak. But this early pain becomes their superpower. They begin to see what others avoid. That people change. That circumstances shift. That even the self is not stable. Scorpio does not fear endings. They study them. And in doing so, they tap into the deepest dharma of all. Nothing is permanent. So what will you choose to become again and again? Person in Lotus Position, Ego Death, the Scorpio path to awakening. There is perhaps no sign more familiar with ego death than Scorpio. What is ego death? It is the moment when your identity collapses, when who you thought you were can no longer survive, when life strips away your roles, your labels, your masks, and leaves you face to face with the unknown. For Scorpio, This happens multiple times in one lifetime. Each betrayal, each loss, each transformation forces them to confront. Who am I without that relationship? Who am I without that dream? Who am I when everything I built is gone? And slowly, painfully, they realize, I am not what I own, not who I loved, not what I achieved. I am the one who watches all those things come and go and remains. That, my friend, is enlightenment. Fire the Phoenix, Scorpio's most sacred form. Scorpio is symbolized not just by the scorpion, but also the phoenix, the mythical bird that dies in flames and rises from its own ashes. This is not a fantasy. It is a spiritual metaphor. In Buddhist terms, the phoenix represents the arhat, the one who has seen through illusion, transcended desire, and risen above the cycle of suffering. But Scorpio doesn't reach this state through meditation alone. They get there through emotional fire, personal death, soul collapse. And once reborn, they don't just live differently. They see differently. Prayer beads personal insight. Scorpio's relationship with emptiness. In my own spiritual counseling practice, I once worked with a Scorpio monk. Yes, a Scorpio who gave up wealth and became a Buddhist practitioner. He told me, letting go was never hard for me. I had already lost everything before. Now, I know what I keep cannot be touched by fire. That is the Scorpio path. To love deeply, lose fully, and return wiser, not bitter. To walk through the fire of ego death and emerge naked but free. This is what the Buddha taught when he said, you only lose what you cling to. Scorpio doesn't just know this. They embody it. Brain how this wisdom changes Scorpio's relationships. Scorpio, once awakened by impermanence, loves differently. They stop clinging. They stop chasing. They stop trying to fix people who were never meant to stay. Instead, they show up with full presence, with deep integrity, with the kind of stillness that can only be earned through pain. They are no longer seeking to possess. They are seeking to merge with truth. Closing reflection, the Dharma of Scorpio. If you are a Scorpio, you may have wondered, why do I feel things so deeply? Why do people leave me? Why does life keep asking me to let go? Now you know, because you are the spiritual warrior of the zodiac. You are here to learn the ultimate truth, not through ideas, but through experience. The truth that everything changes, everyone leaves. And that's not a tragedy, it's a teacher. You were never meant to be soft and safe. You were meant to become a mirror of awakening. You don't survive death. You become something after it. And that is Scorpio's hidden dharma. Dove in Part 8, we will explore Scorpio's emotional intelligence, their ability to detect lies, read energy, and navigate the emotional underworld with razor-sharp intuition. Brain Part 8, emotional intelligence of a Scorpio, hidden strength beneath the silence. People often mistake Scorpio's silence for detachment, their calm for coldness, their privacy for secrecy. But if you look closely, beneath that quiet exterior is one of the most emotionally intelligent forces in the zodiac. Scorpio doesn't avoid emotions. They master them. They feel everything, just not the way others do. They don't express to be heard. They observe to understand. Why Scorpio hides their emotions? Scorpio isn't naturally vulnerable, not because they lack emotions, but because they've learned how dangerous raw honesty can be in the wrong hands. They were likely the child who felt too much, the teen who loved too deeply, the adult who gave too much and got too little in return. So now, they protect their inner world. They don't speak to be understood. They watch to see if you're safe enough to receive the truth. Their silence is not passive. It's a radar scanning, sensing, discerning. Detective the human lie detector. Scorpio can tell when your smile is fake. Your "I'm fine" is a mask. Your excitement is performance. Your loyalty is temporary. They don't need proof. They feel the shift. They read tone, energy, timing, gaze. This is not suspicion, it's survival. Because Scorpio has been lied to before, used before, disarmed by charm before. And now, they see through the veil, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Lightbulb story, the recruiter who could read souls. Meet Terrence, a Scorpio executive recruiter I met in Singapore. He didn't speak much. He let others talk. But by the end of a 10-minute interview, he could tell whether someone would burn out in 6 months or become a leader in 2 years. Not because of the resume, but because of the emotional residue people left behind. He told me, I don't listen to what people say. I feel what they mean. And that's the Scorpio gift. They don't need your words to know your truth. They see it in your vibrations. Person Lotus position spiritual insight, deep listening as a form of wisdom. In Buddhist practice, we speak of deep listening, not just hearing, but feeling the unspoken truths within others. Scorpio embodies this form of listening. They hear the silence behind your laughter, the tremor in your calm voice, the grief behind your strength. They are not just emotionally intelligent. They are emotionally prophetic. Because they do not judge emotion as weakness. They understand that emotion, when mastered, is the purest form of power. Compass Scorpio's inner compass. Because they've suffered, Scorpio no longer reacts emotionally. They respond intuitively. They know when to walk away, when to hold space, when to forgive without forgetting, when to stay silent, because words would only make it worse. This internal compass doesn't come from books. It comes from surviving emotional war zones. And every scar is now a sensor. The mirror effect. Why people fear Scorpio's gaze. Here's something most people don't understand. People don't fear Scorpio because they're mysterious. They fear Scorpio because being around them forces truth to surface. Scorpio's presence makes you confront your shadow, your contradictions, your emotional dishonesty. And many people aren't ready for that. But those who are, they find a Scorpio's gaze liberating. Because when Scorpio sees you, they see all of you, and they still stay. That kind of love, that kind of presence, it changes lives. Speech balloon. Why Scorpio says so little. Scorpio speaks less because they process more. They are not afraid of silence. In fact, they find truth in it. They watch how you sit in silence, how long it takes before you fill it, what you fill it with. Their stillness is never empty. It is sacred data collection. And when they finally speak, it will hit like thunder because it's rooted in observation, not reaction. Light bulb closing reflection. Emotional intelligence is armor and gift. If you are a Scorpio and feel like your emotional intensity is too much, it isn't. It is your edge, your shield, your compass. You are not dramatic. You are aware. You are not overthinking. You are presensing. You are not hiding. You are protecting the parts of you that once bled without consent. And to the world, you may be unreadable, but to those wise enough to slow down, you are the most intelligent heart they'll ever encounter. In Part 9, we meet the fully awakened Scorpio, the one who has died, rebuilt, and now walks through life as a quiet storm. We'll explore how they no longer chase, they attract. How they no longer react, they create. Fire Part 9, Rise of the Phoenix, the spiritual laws of a Scorpio who has lost it all. When a Scorpio has nothing left to lose, they do not beg. They do not chase. They do not collapse into self-pity. They transform. But this transformation is not glamorous. It is messy, sacred, and soul-deep. It is not a comeback. It is a spiritual resurrection. And when they rise, they don't look like what they've been through. They look like a storm that learned to walk calmly. Volcano the Phoenix phase, from collapse to command. Scorpio's final form is not vengeance. It is sovereignty. After the betrayals, the breakdowns, the ego death, they rise into someone who doesn't ask for love, they attract it. Doesn't argue, they outgrow. Doesn't control, they create. They are no longer moved by flattery, nor shaken by rejection. Because now, they know. What leaves me was never mine. What remains is sacred. Person Lotus position. The stillness of power. The awakened Scorpio doesn't need noise. They no longer seek validation, approval, or status. Their stillness is their strength. Their calmness doesn't mean they're detached. It means they are deeply rooted in something unshakable. This is the same energy seen in seasoned monks and warrior sages, and elders who've buried children and still offer you tea with kindness in their eyes. It is a power that no longer wants to dominate, only to exist purely. When face real-life story, the man who chose peace over war. Let me tell you about Ravi, a Scorpio entrepreneur from Nepal. He built a thriving business by age 35, survived a near-death illness, and lost his wife to cancer 2 years later. Everyone expected him to spiral, to drown in rage, despair, bitterness. But instead, he went silent. Then he sold everything and moved to Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha. There, he started a center for young men recovering from addiction and trauma. He taught them not how to fight, but how to breathe, how to sit with their shadows, how to forgive what could not be fixed. I asked him once, "How did you survive all that?" He smiled. "I stopped trying to be strong. I started trying to be real. That is the phoenix. Not fire, not fury, just truth on fire." Candle Scorpio and the Four Noble Truths. The Scorpio rebirth echoes the core of Buddhist philosophy. Life is suffering dukkha, Scorpio doesn't run from this. They absorb it. Suffering comes from attachment, tanha. Scorpio learns this the hard way. There is an end to suffering, nirodha. Scorpio experiences this through transformation. The path to freedom is through right living, magga. Scorpio finds this by walking through their own fire. A Scorpio who has awakened is not cynical. They are wise. They no longer seek to avoid pain. They seek to align with truth, knowing that all things, joy, love, loss, are just waves in the ocean of awareness. DNA, the spiritual laws that Scorpio lives by post-rebirth. After surviving the deep losses, Scorpio lives differently. They no longer live by ego. They live by inner law. Some of those laws include: I do not chase. I align. I do not beg. I bless. I do not punish. I walk away. I do not fear endings. I trust the cycle. I do not fear solitude. I find God there. Scorpio becomes a living oracle. They don't need to talk much. Their presence says what words cannot. Prayer beads their relationships transform too. Once reborn, Scorpio no longer builds relationships based on chemistry alone. Now they seek spiritual compatibility, shared silence, mutual truth, energetic safety. They are no longer impressed by titles, appearance, or ambition. They want depth. They want devotion. They want presence. And if that cannot be found, they remain happily alone, because Scorpio no longer fears loneliness. They've met themselves in the dark and found divine company. Light bulb closing reflection, becoming the flame, not the burn. If you are a Scorpio rising from the ashes, know this: you do not need to prove anything. You are not here to explain the fire that changed you. You are here to embody it, to walk into rooms and make people feel safe or seen without trying, to tell the truth without cruelty, to hold power without control, to carry pain without passing it on. You are no longer the one in flames. You are the keeper of sacred fire. You are the flame itself, and you light others just by being. Devon Part 10, our final chapter, we bring everything together. We share the final truths Scorpio must remember, their gifts, their path, their power, and what the world desperately needs to learn from them. Milky Way Part 10, final message. If you are a Scorpio or loved one. If you are a Scorpio, you are not here to live a small life. You are here to dive deep, to love completely, to burn, to break, to rise again, wiser, quieter, unstoppable. You are not like the others. You were never meant to be. You feel the world through your skin. You sense lies in people's eyes. You carry entire emotional storms in silence. And yet, you keep loving. That alone makes you a miracle. Crystal ball, if you love a Scorpio, please understand, they are not easy to love. They are not lighthearted flings. They are not casual companions. They are not surface-level souls. Loving a Scorpio means choosing depth over comfort, truth over ego, healing over pretending. It means entering the fire and coming out either forged or burned. But if you stay, if you earn their trust and never violate it, you will witness a love that is ancient, protective, and sacred. They will read you when no one else notices you're slipping. Fight for your name when you're not in the room. Hold space for your shadow without flinching. Love you with a loyalty that even death will envy. If you are loved by a Scorpio, count it as a blessing disguised as a storm. Person Lotus position, a message to the Scorpio soul. To the Scorpio reading this: you've been told you're too much, too deep, too serious, too intense. But I want to tell you this, you're exactly enough. This world needs people who don't look away, who don't numb their pain, who don't fake their joy. The world needs your X-ray vision, your silent wisdom, your ability to hold space for what others deny. Yes, you've walked through darkness. Yes, you've burned. Yes, people have feared you, misunderstood you, even left you. But you're still here. And that makes you undeniably powerful. Repeat button, the sacred loop of Scorpio's life. The Scorpio life isn't linear. It's cyclical. Love, loss, silence, fire, rebirth, repeat. Each time, you emerge closer to your truth. Each time, you shed another layer of illusion. Each time, you awaken further. Until one day, you are no longer breaking down. You are simply becoming light. Final teaching from Scorpio to the world. Scorpio teaches us that depth matters. Pain purifies. Trust is sacred. Truth is the ultimate gift. And silence? It is not emptiness. It is where the soul speaks loudest. They remind us that in a world addicted to noise and speed, There is power in the slow, grace in the grief, and fire in the stillness. Shooting star the path to Buddhist wisdom. And so we end, not with fireworks, but with peace. Because Scorpio has walked the path of the Buddha without even knowing it. They have known suffering, faced impermanence, let go of ego, and now they see clearly, not through dogma, but through experience. They're not perfect. They are real. And in being real, they become whole. To the Scorpio soul, may your next rebirth be softer. May your silence be heard. And may your fire never again be mistaken for rage, but recognized as the light that others follow in the dark. Sparkles to the world. Scorpio is not here to be liked. They are here to be remembered. Directed call to action, spoken from the heart. If this video stirred something in you, if you recognized yourself in these words, or you simply admire the unstoppable force of Scorpio energy, then let's keep going deeper together. Glowing star, subscribe to this channel, The Path to Buddhist Wisdom, because here, we don't just talk about astrology. We awaken ancient truths. We merge mysticism with mastery. And we honor every soul's path to greatness. Hit that bell. Leave a comment. And remember, the most powerful journey is the one within.